Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at a pretty dark topic,
Oh, yeah.
the guillotine.
The guillotine.
I think most people, when they hear the word guillotine, they immediately think of the French Revolution
Right,
and all that. But
yeah.
what if I told you that the last guillotine execution in France happened in 1977?
Wow.
Same year, Saturday Night Fever was at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a wild juxtaposition there.
Yeah, that is amazing. I had no idea it was that recent.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how these things can linger in society,
Yeah.
even as everything else is changing around it.
It really does.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of things kind of lingering,
Yeah.
we hear guillotine, and we think the inventor of the guillotine,
Right.
but it's not that simple, is it?
Not quite. The guillotine was actually named after a French physician, a Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin,
Okay.
and he proposed a more humane method of execution in France in 1789.
Humane. Beheading somebody.
I know, right? That's where the contradictions come in. Dr. Guillotine, he didn't actually invent the device. He just advocated for it. He thought it would be a quicker, less painful death than what they were using at the time.
So if he didn't invent it, who did?
Well, the first prototype was designed and built by a German harpsichord maker named Tobias Schmidt,
Okay.
and then a French surgeon, Antoine Louis.
Okay.
But it was Guillotin's advocacy that pushed it into the spotlight and unfortunately kind of linked his name with it forever.
Yeah, talk about a legacy you don't really want.
Right.
But it sounds like at the time the guillotine was seen as progress.
It was, yeah. At that time, executions were public spectacles. They were meant to inflict the maximum amount of suffering possible.
Wow.
Burnings, dismemberment, prolonged torture. The guillotine, with its swiftness and supposedly painless death, was meant to be a great equalizer.
And it was probably faster for everybody involved, too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was in direct contrast to what commoners would have had to suffer through for their executions.
Right. And then, of course, we can't talk about the guillotine without talking about the French Revolution.
Right. It
Yeah.
played a key role. You had the execution of King Louis VI
Of course.
and Marie Antoinette, both by guillotine, and it kind of cemented its place in history.
Right.
It represented the fall of the monarchy and the people taking control. But even then, it kind of underscored just the inherent brutality of capital punishment,
Right.
even if it was supposed to be quick.
Yeah, definitely. So then we move into the 20th century, and things start to take a turn for the worse for the guillotine and its symbolism.
Definitely. When Hitler started using the guillotine during World War II for mass executions, it really tarnished its image.
Yeah.
It became a symbol of terror, a reminder of the Nazi regime and its crimes.
Yeah. And that takes us to 1977 and the story of Hamida Gendoubi,
Right.
the last person executed by guillotine in France. And his story is really a tragic one.
It is. He was a Tunisian immigrant and working as a stock boy in France.
Okay.
And in 1971, he was in a terrible tractor accident.
Oh, no.
He ended up losing 2/3 of his leg.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and the accident left him with chronic pain, which led to alcohol abuse, and he had difficulty finding work.
It's just a horrible situation all around. But
Yeah,
this is where things take a dark turn.
Yeah, this is where his descent into crime becomes very disturbing.
Yeah.
He started forcing women into prostitution,
Okay.
beginning with a young woman named Elizabeth Bousquet.
Really?
And he would later trap 2 other young girls in his apartment
Wow.
and holding them captive in a sex trafficking ring.
So he was basically exploiting these women, just taking advantage of their vulnerability
Absolutely.
for his own personal gain.
Yes.
And his obsession with Elizabeth Bousquet,
Yes.
who had filed a complaint against him, is really chilling.
It is. He couldn't let go of the fact that she escaped his control.
Yeah.
And that rage just festered in him for a year.
It's crazy how these things can just completely consume a person.
It is. And then in this terrifying act of revenge, he kidnapped Elizabeth and subjected her to days of torture
Oh, my God.
before finally strangling her. On the outskirts of Marseille, it was a truly horrific, premeditated crime.
It's a relief that he was caught.
It is. And he was apprehended thanks to the bravery of the 2 women he was holding captive.
And for them.
While he was in custody, they spoke out and finally broke free from his control, and their testimony was crucial in getting his conviction.
Right. So in February of 1977, he was sentenced to death by guillotine.
He was, and his defense, which tried to blame his actions on the trauma from his accident,
Oh, wow.
was swiftly rejected by the court.
So they recognized the severity of his crimes
They did.
and the suffering that he inflicted.
Absolutely.
His execution, though, would mark a turning point
It did.
in French history.
Yes.
The end of an era for France.
Yes.
But before we get to that fateful day, I want to pause here for a moment. Can you believe that this was happening in such recent history? What strikes you the most about this story so far?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that something like this could happen so recently. We think of public executions and we picture big crowds and like a spectacle.
Right, like something out of a history book.
Right, exactly. But his execution was not a public event, thankfully.
Right. It took place at the Baumetz prison
Baumetz prison.
in Marseille.
Okay.
But we do have accounts of his final moments.
Really?
Yeah. Jean Duby facing his death, he desperately tried to delay things.
Oh.
He chain-smoked cigarettes,
Oh, God.
drank water while the guards were preparing the guillotine.
I can't even imagine, knowing that that's it,
I know.
that's the end.
It's a scary thought.
It really is.
Uh-huh.
And so in the early hours of September 10th, 1977, just 12 days before his 28th birthday,
Wow.
Hamida Jean Duby was executed.
Yeah.
And this marked the end of the guillotine in France,
Mm-hmm.
and for the most part, in Western Europe. It's just wild to think that it was still being used for so long. Yeah. It really does make you wonder.
It does. And it raises some interesting and unsettling questions about consciousness after beheading.
Right.
I mean, is there any chance that a person could still be aware, even for a few seconds,
Yeah.
after the blade falls?
It's a disturbing question. There have been some studies done on animals that show brain activity for up to 30 seconds after decapitation.
Really?
Yeah. But whether that translates to human consciousness is still up for debate.
So we don't know.
We just don't know.
So could John Duby have been aware?
It's possible.
It's a disturbing thought.
It is. It's a very disturbing question. But his execution was a turning point.
Right.
It forced France and really much of the Western world to really look at capital punishment.
And it's just interesting to think that it started out as something progressive,
Right.
then became this instrument of terror,
Yeah.
and ultimately this relic of the past.
Right.
It shows how much society's values can change over time.
It really does. It makes
Yeah.
you think about what we consider humane treatment today and whether those ideas will still hold up in the future.
Right. We've moved away from public executions to more private methods.
Mm-hmm.
But does that mean we're actually making progress?
That's a good question.
Or are we just trying to hide from this disturbing reality?
Yeah, are we just trying to sweep it under the rug?
Right. It makes you wonder what Dr. Guillotine would think.
I know.
The man who championed a more humane death.
I doubt he thought his name would become synonymous with such a controversial device.
I know. It's kind of a reminder that even with good intentions,
Yeah.
there can be unintended and sometimes really bad consequences.
Absolutely. It's important to keep evaluating our beliefs
It really is.
and to have open and honest conversations
Yeah.
about difficult topics like capital punishment.
You know, when you think about Hamida Jean Duby,
Yeah.
the last person guillotined in France,
Right.
it really makes you wonder, have we evolved at all?
Right.
Have we really moved beyond the need for this kind of brutal punishment?
It's a question we all need to think about because the way we punish people reflects on us as a society.
It does. This deep dive has really been eye-opening for me.
Yeah,
The whole topic is just so complex.
it is.
What resonates with you the most about this story? It's just wild to me that one man's awful crimes,
Right.
ended up leading to the end of a practice that had been around for centuries.
Yeah. It's almost like this ripple effect that started with this horrific act.
It is. It really sparked a conversation, though,
Oh, absolutely.
about justice and
Yeah.
how we punish people as a society.
Right. And it shows that even in these dark parts of history, there can be change that comes out of it.
Yeah.
John Duby's case really highlights the guillotine's contradictions. I
Right.
mean, it was considered progress at one point.
I know. Crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that progress isn't always a straight line.
It's not. It's unpredictable, and sometimes we have to confront some pretty uncomfortable truths.
Right. About ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so important to keep these conversations going.
Yes.
Keep learning, keep questioning everything.
And to be open-minded.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this deep dive has really just been so eye-opening.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's just incredible to think about how this one device
I
has
know.
had such a complicated journey,
Right.
starting out as this symbol of progress and ending up as something so brutal.
It really makes you think about our own capacity for both,
Yeah, right.
cruelty and compassion.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what people will think about our justice system in the future.
Yeah, what will people 100 years from now
Right.
think about how we punish people today?
Will they see it as barbaric?
Right. It's something to think about.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder to always keep challenging things.
Absolutely. Never be afraid to question the status quo.
Right, and always try to strive for a better future.
Yeah, a future where justice doesn't require brutality.
Exactly. Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive,
It has.
exploring the guillotine and this story of Hamida Jandubi, and we hope it's given you some things to think about.
We do. And we hope you will continue to explore these topics, challenge your own assumptions, and have conversations about the world around us.
That's how we learn and grow as people.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Thank you for being here.